Hello, everyone. Welcome to Highways and Hilltops with Charlie and Jody. This week we'll cover episode 14. It's Highways and Hilltops Goes International.
Yeah, this is a special bonus edition of Highways and Hilltops.
This week we introduce our daughter, Baylie.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Baylie. It's great to have you on the podcast today. One reason why we wanted Baylie on the podcast is because she got to take her first international trip to France just a little over a year ago, and it was a work trip, so she has become very good at learning how to mix business and leisure. And I know sometimes when I'm on a work trip, I just go to my stuff and then go back to the hotel and then hang out there all evening. And there's so many things that I could be out exploring and seeing in the area, but sometimes that just feels hard to me. So I think we can pick up some good tips and tricks from Baylie as she talks about her first international trip. And I'm going to let her tell you where we're going today.
We are going to a town in France called Pornichet, and I'll apologize in advance for how many words I'm going to mispronounce. I'm going to try my best, but definitely an Okie trying to say French words, so just bear with me there.
So, this being your first international trip, and as a dad, we we tend to worry. How did you feel about your first international trip?
Well, it was a little unnerving, especially because we mentioned this was for work, so I was not with any friends or family. It was with coworkers, and I was really nervous, but it all worked out really well.
So, how long did it take for the nerves to subside, and did you feel safe?
I felt safe, so I traveled from Oklahoma City to Atlanta. And by the time I got to Atlanta, I just said, hey, it is what it is. I'm about to get on a big old airplane. And the flight across is about 8-ish hours, give or take some. So I kind of accepted it sitting in the Atlanta airport waiting for my coworkers. But once I was with people who, I knew I was okay.
So, an 8-hour flight. So, I've had several flights for working as well. How did you pass the time on your 8-hour flight?
It's a great question. I can sleep just about anywhere, which is very lucky for me. We had the pleasure of sitting in economy. So they give you these headphones and an eye mask and a little pillow and a paper thin blanket, and they say good luck. So I watched a little bit of TV. I mostly slept or tried to, and kind of would get up. I tried to get up and explore a little bit because I was scared of getting blood clots and things like that. So I, did a combination of things, but thankfully I primarily slept, and it may or may not have been thanks to Dramamine.
We must have that in common because I've noticed I've not flown internationally, but for work as well, I've not had some pretty long trips. And so, same deal. I like to sleep through them. I feel like I'm a little better charged when I get there and a little less, I don't know what you call that, air sick or jet lag, I think is what they call it.
Yeah.
So it sounds like we have that in common. So you slept a lot, you watched movies, you made it pretty good. Is there anything you would do differently?
Yeah, I think again with the headphones, they gave you some little complimentary headphones, which was nice. I think next time I fly internationally, I'm going to get online and buy a little Bluetooth adapter for the headphone jack so that I can use my AirPods or my noise canceling nice headphones. And I would put my compression socks on as soon as I get in the airplane. I wouldn't wait. I fell asleep, forgot about it, woke up about 4 hours in, and I was pretty swollen. And that's not very fun, especially with a tight layover like we had in Paris. And then another thing is, I'd just say make sure you pack that toothbrush because after you sleep for a good 6 hours, it's nice to freshen up once you get off the airplane. Or before you get off the airplane, I should say.
Well, those are good tips. I never even thought about compression socks, being a guy, but a toothbrush to keep you fresh, and then compression socks, those are good ideas.
Yeah, maybe even some face wash. I'm gonna pack myself a little toiletry kit. I thought about a toothbrush last time, but just a whole little toiletry kit. Just keep yourself feeling good. The air is so dry. Y'all know how that goes in airplanes. The air is so dry because it's just being recirculated, and it can do some damage on, your skin and stuff too. So just something to help moisturize and freshen up. And that's some things I'll take with me for my next international travel for sure.
You know, I always track your flights. So I was watching you from Atlanta to Paris on the Flight Tracker app.
Yeah.
And all that travel over the ocean, I was so conflicted. Like, do I feel better that she's flying over the ocean, or would I rather her be flying over land? Because right now, I don't know. I just know that it's been a long time over water.
Yeah, so you pick your seats, right? Like in the States, we fly Southwest a lot. And I love Southwest, open seating. I know they're changing all of that soon, so this probably won't be applicable. But for those international flights, you have the option to you can upgrade, pay to upgrade, whatever, but you can also just choose from the free seats and pick from somewhere where you want to sit. And I chose to sit away from the windows. So I kind of was like out of sight, out of mind almost. I kept it to the middle rows so that I wouldn't start thinking about it and getting anxious. It is a little unnerving at times, but one thing too, actually, about the Wi-Fi, I bought the Wi-Fi so I could text you guys, and it goes out over certain parts of the ocean. I don't know what the deal is with that, if it's like jurisdictional rules or however it works, or not close enough for a signal. But yeah, that was a little freaky. The safety net of Wi-Fi was was nice until it wasn't there, and then it was a little spooky. But thankfully, the sleeping through most of the flight helped. But those times I was awake and the Wi-Fi didn't work, I had to keep myself distracted.
Well, that's good to know for people who don't generally take really long flights, because that's not something I would have really thought about either upon purchasing the Wi-Fi, would be that there would be times when it wouldn't work.
Yeah, it's definitely something to consider. I want to say a majority of the flight it was available, but there was definitely portions where it wasn't. But you still have, the screens for TV shows and stuff like that to keep you entertained if you don't want to be on your phone and things like that. So there's stuff to keep you entertained. You can walk up around the galley and all of that. Get your limbs moving and stuff when you're awake is a great idea. Back to the blood clot thing, that's a very serious issue and something that you have to, keep in mind because you don't want to get a blood clot. So
Yeah, it would be pretty tempting to just sit in that same spot for as long as you could sit and not
oh yeah.
think about getting up and walking around, but that is really important.
For sure.
And did I say that correctly? You flew from Atlanta to Paris, was that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I flew from Oklahoma City to Atlanta, and then from Atlanta we took the 8 hour, that was the 8 hour travel to Paris, which is Charles de Gaulle Airport. And then in Paris we had a mad dash to get through security and get to our next gate. It took us about an hour and a half to deplane and then to get through security and then get to the opposite side of the airport. We had to take a train in there somewhere to little airport tram just to get to our next gate, and we made it in time about 5 minutes before we boarded.
So I was going to ask you what it felt like to when you first landed in Paris, but it sounds like you didn't have time to think too much of what it felt like. You were just trying to get there.
Yes, it was also really early in the morning, so it was pretty dark out until about right before we took off. We were lucky with the timing of our flight that, like you mentioned, the jet lag thing. We were lucky with the timing of our flight that we kind of flew through the night. So we slept at a time whenever it was appropriate to sleep. That's kind of one of the ways that you beat jet lag, they say, is if you think about Paris time, you kind of want to start acclimating your body to sleep whenever they're sleeping so that by the time you get there, you want to stay awake through the daytime so that you sleep on a regular schedule, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that sounds like a good pro tip because, with all the different places people fly for business, if your schedule is not syncing correctly, like you said, and if you can kind of somehow get there and kind of get on their routine, very helpful.
Oh yeah, and I'm not really really that great of an example because we flew from Paris then to Nantes, France, and that's where we took a taxi for about an hour and a half taxi over to Pornichet, which is where our hotel was. And I definitely, once we got settled and checked into our hotel, took like a 4.5 hour nap. But again, I can sleep through anything. So I slept that night just fine, overstimulated and knowing I needed to sleep so I could be ready for work in the morning.
So you mentioned this taxi. This is always an interesting topic for all the travelers. It's something I like to ask. I've been to a few of those places. One of those examples that I can remember for me was like Mexico City. And usually the taxis you'll find out really quick where you're at. And this can be the most extreme part of your trip. So
Yeah, yeah.
land and find a taxi in Paris and get around.
Yeah, you know how that goes. So it was Nantes. We flew into the tiny little airport in Nantes, France, and that's the airport we flew out of too. But yeah, you're right. I mean, and the thing about it too, I'm probably gonna keep coming back to this, but I feel like it's relevant. When you travel for work, usually it's other people setting things up for you, right? Too. So we were told that we would have a car waiting for us, but I'm a little anxious and a little high strung. And thankfully, my coworkers were very chill and very go with the flow. So they kind of let me spiral a little bit and they're like, no, we'll figure it out. It's not a big deal. So we get the baggage claim, get our bags. Everything went smooth with our flights. Thankfully, no one was missing anything by the time we got where we were going. We went out trying to figure out where the taxi pickup was. All the signs are in French, obviously. And we ended up having to ask security, like, where's taxi pickup usually? Because the signs in this airport were not that great at all. We ended up getting where we're going just fine. And yeah, the only thing about the taxi was the kilometers per hour were took me a second to kind of connect the dots that was not miles per hour I was looking at on the screen. It was definitely kilometers per hour. But yeah, it was a beautiful little taxi ride through seemingly like countryside, not a lot of like bigger industry towns as we headed out to the coast where we were going to be settled in Pornichet.
So did the taxi drivers in France, did they drive like they do in Mexico City, or was he pretty chill?
He was pretty chill. It was a very expensive taxi. The meter just kept clicking and clicking, and I was just thinking, "Oh my gosh, this is wild." But I think that their rates over there are better than what they get paid over here. So good for them.
Sounds like that was a little bit rural too, right? So it wasn't like you were driving in big cities.
Oh yeah, no, it was definitely pretty rural. But it was awesome. It was a really cool experience. I just sat and watched out the window pretty much the whole time.
Did you ride a small plane from the Paris to that smaller airport? I forget what you called it.
Yeah, it was Nantes to Nantes, France. Yeah, it was comparable to like a CRJ, like a bombardier style plane, or I think that people sometimes call those puddle jumpers. Yeah, it was a smaller plane for sure. It was kind of interesting coming off the gigantic plane to a really tiny plane because it was only about I think it was 45-minute flight from Paris to Nantes.
So back to the taxi driver. I judge everything on my first impression with my taxi driver. So how was interactions? Were you able to communicate with them and get where you were going, or did you put it on your phone, or how did you get by that?
We pointed to the sign that he had and he took off and we started following him. I learned that the French people, they're lovely. They really are. I think they respect you a little bit more if you try to speak the language, but they can definitely tell that you're American. We had some very interesting interactions throughout this whole trip because it was about 2 weeks long. Locals and things like that in the town that we stayed in. Some people have quite a decent amount of tolerance for you, and others have no tolerance for you. And, can't really blame either of them, I guess. I've tried to view it as a spectrum, But back to the taxi driver. Yeah, he wasn't super friendly, wasn't super conversive, obviously, because, I think that he was a primarily French speaker. But we got the point across, he had a sign for us. We got in the car and he took off, and we just assumed that he knew where he was going.
I always wonder if people are friendly, right? So you see movies, you see things like that. And it's nice to know that they're friendly. They're at least he's trying to take care of you.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he, was just doing a job, and I think that we tried a little bit to be, friendly. We were obviously very friendly and respectable this whole trip. We tried our best to be at least, and yeah, he was nice, but he wasn't a primarily English speaker, so we just let him do his thing and figured we'd end up where we were going, and if we didn't, we would figure it out. So
At least you would all be together.
yes, that this whole trip that's kind of the mantra is at least we will be together if something goes awry and we will figure it out together. Most work trips we do get to receive a rental car. International trips, it is not necessarily always the case, and this was an instance where it was not the case. So I think good and bad sides to that, right? Good, the fact that we didn't have to drive on French roads and try to figure out the roadways and have to navigate that, but bad in the sense sense of, you kind of rely on somebody else to get you where you need to go if you can't walk. So one of those things.
So it sounds like we've made it to the flight. We've got our baggage. Nobody's missing any baggage. That's awesome, especially on an international flight.
Yes.
Got through the cab ride. So now you're arriving. So you're in France. I bet there's going to be some story here of a great dinner, right?
Yeah, yeah, you guessed it. So our flight, we landed really, really early in the morning, and we ended up arriving to Pornichet around 11 a.m. ish. We go to our hotel. He dropped us off right at the front door. It was great. We couldn't check in. We looked check in up on the way to the hotel. They said check in was about 3 p.m. So we said, oh, well, we're getting there at 11. Let's, I guess we'll figure it out. We get there. They did a bag check for us, which was awesome. They held our bags while we walked around, but they said, we could probably get you in about 1:30. So we ended up walking around to try and find something to eat and to kind of just check out the town.
So, what day of the week was it when you arrived in France to check into your hotel? What day was it?
Okay, so my travel was on a Sunday.
Okay.
And that makes it really interesting too, because there's a French custom or rule. Whenever you look it up, it kind of says that it's kind of a rule, it's kind of a custom that Sunday is the day of rest in France. And so you have limited resources on places to eat and things that are open on Sunday. And part of that is what I read is law, but most of it's custom. Is kind of just a day where, you don't have to work, enjoy your day with your family and rest and, don't have to work kind of thing, which is great for travelers because we were hungry and we had to figure something out. 90% of stores in the town were closed.
Wow.
We were really lucky to be right off in a beach town. So the French seasons kind of coincide with our seasons here in the States. It kind of follows the same template. So I was there in October. And so it was beautiful weather. It was awesome outside, but that's kind of their off season for the town that we were in. And the town is pretty touristy with the beach, and they do a lot of events and things on the beach and whatnot. But it was October, so they were in their off season.
So what did you actually find to eat?
Yeah, so we walked around for a while. We actually weren't immediately hungry, but we knew it would end up that way. We ended up Googling about this and found out about the custom and rules, so to speak. But there's always exceptions to that, right? So we actually happened upon a place that was open, and it was mostly people outside that were enjoying like charcuterie and alcoholic beverages. And so we said, hey, if we have to eat some salami to get by, we will. So we went inside and asked about lunch, and they said they were serving lunch. So we sat down and we actually did get to enjoy a nice meal for lunch that day. But it was pretty clutch that they were open. We tried to sit down at another place and they were only serving beverages. And so it seems that the day of rest, people are open for beverages and good times. And only a select few were offering lunch that we could find in our near vicinity.
So then you go get checked into your hotel, but you guys still have to eat dinner, right?
Yeah. So there's a thing called McDo, and and you know exactly what McDo is. It is McDonald's. We ended up just getting Uber Eats of McDonald's. For one, we were very intrigued, and for two, it was convenient and we didn't really have to think about it, and we were all exhausted at this point. So we got a little McDo delivered and it was awesome.
So you and I have been on many trips, and one thing I know about you is we always try to find the coolest things to eat. So again, how did you end up at McDonald's? Was this it?
I think it's just exhaustion. We were all so tired and we had walked around for, 3.5 hours, and scouring for lunch was kind of exhausting too. So we all said, hey, let's just order something easy. We got to be up early for work anyways. Let's just Uber Eats it. And who's not curious about McDonald's, Charles? They have potato wedges. Come on. They have a croque monsieur, which is a pretty famous little French sandwich. Now, the McDonald's version is on the kids menu, and it is a little tired looking. But my coworker was on a mission to try every croque monsieur possible, so he did end up ordering it, and it was fine. But I had chicken nuggets. They have curly fries. They have curry sauce. I learned curry is a big thing in France. You can get curry sauce just about anywhere. But yeah, it was good. It hit the spot.
So in typical Bailey fashion, there was still some kind of adventure to this meal. So,
Yeah, for sure. And the lobby had games. So while we ate our McDonald's, while we waited for it to be delivered, and even while we ate it, we were just looking at the French games like French Scrabble, and there was a few others that were pretty fun little bits.
That's awesome. So, Baylie, I'm looking at what appears to be McDonald's, and I don't know what I'm looking at. I see the potato wedges, and I'm guessing this is the curry sauce, but what are you eating?
That's the croque monsieur. I think the croque monsieur is like a ham and cheese kind of sandwich, what we would call it here. I mean, the French people might yell at me for describing it that way. The one he ate for lunch looks way more beautiful and appetizing than this one does. But yeah, that's the McDonald's version of a croque monsieur.
So, as we scroll on through the photo gallery, we see this picture of a beautiful beach. So, was this your view?
So this was a little 5-minute-ish walk from our hotel. This is the beach in Pornichet that we walked down to almost every evening that we could, just to, decompress, find some dinner. We did a lot of walking in the town because, like I said, we didn't necessarily have a rental car. So we walked a ton, and yeah, that was the beach in the town, and it was very beautiful. It was really cool. And like I said, if we would have been there in the summertime, they do concerts on the beach and lots of events and fun things. But it had some fun features about it. The walking path was super nice. I mean, all their roads were really accessible for walkers for the most part, and it was a good time.
That sounds awesome. So, do you kind of want to take us through your work week? Like, were there notable times or events or things that you did throughout the week while you guys were working through the daytime?
Yeah, so we worked Monday through Friday, and we worked regular hours. We were shuttled to our work site, and it's just kind of funny, like the French work week I'm not going to speak for the whole because I don't know about the whole, but the way that they made it sound was it's customary that they do not work on Fridays. So Friday was kind of funny because it was pretty empty at the job site that we were at. And we went offsite for lunch a few times, but we mostly ate lunch at the, cafeteria area. It was, weird not being surrounded by only English speakers, but there's something also kind of poetic and beautiful about that. I didn't feel unsafe ever. I felt very safe in France. It was a really cool time. It was really awesome to experience it.
So, you say something about a fondue place?
We had heard about this place from some of the people that we were working with, and they said that it's really nice and it's really cool time to just go and experience it. So we went with little to no expectation. We're like, a French fondue restaurant, what's that going to be about? So it was super busy, but it was the coolest vibe. They brought out this big stove looking thing with a bunch of coals in it and lit it on fire. And then they gave us a tray of potatoes and more potatoes, boiled potatoes, French fries, and then like a scallop potato option. And then they gave us a bunch of raw meat. So we had duck, turkey, and beef. I think that was it on the tray. And then they gave you a ton of sauces and a bunch of cheese. You'll see in the picture, there's a compartment in the bottom where you melt your cheese and you pour it over whatever the heck you want. And then there's a grill on top. So it was the coolest meal. There was a bunch of cool meals. Along with that, we had a place that we did this huge seafood platter that had whelks and snails and oysters and scampi and shrimp and crab. And me and my coworker split that and we devoured the whole thing. We had Domino's too. Our very last meal was Domino's pizza in France, and it was delivered via Uber Eats bike.
By bike?
Yes, by bike. The Dauphine area was only about 15-minute to 20-minute walk from where we were. Yeah. And yeah, they do bike deliveries. It was awesome.
Wow.
So they rest on Sunday. They don't like to work on Friday. They have all these good eats. The weather's good. This sounds like a laid back place.
Oh yeah. And honestly, I felt the best with my diet there, which is usually you can't say that when you travel for work. I mean, like dad, mom, you do sometimes too. Like you guys know, when you travel for work, sometimes you get what you get and you can't throw a fit about it because you don't handpick the location that you get to go to. And there's something poetic about that too. But sometimes you're stuck with some interesting stuff. But not here. It was fantastic.
I'm just intrigued by this fondue place. So they gave you this little stove and then you cooked your own food? Is that how this happened?
We did. Yeah, we learned really fast that the cheese, and I cannot for the life of me remember what the cheese was called, but the cheese melted and would start to burn. So we had someone on cheese duty and someone on meat duty. And then I was kind of the videographer. I kind of let the men do the cooking, but it was fun.
I need to open a restaurant like that. I give you all the stuff and you cook your own food. I like it.
Yes, and then some people had like the traditional when you think of fondue, like when you go to melting pot, they give you the big tin pot and you dip in it. Some people around us did also have that. So I think that this isn't actually fondue. What we ordered is something completely different. But I think that it's kind of an offshoot of that.
That's amazing. Okay, I think I'm also looking at a picture of what appears to be a bakery, and this looks amazing.
Yes, a boulangerie, one of the two. That's French for bakery. I had too many pain au chocolat, which is a problem because as many people know about me, I have a dairy issue. We do not get along. So actually over there it didn't seem like I was as affected by the dairy particulates like I typically am here. So say what you want about that, I don't know, but I was eating cheese every now and then, specifically at Altitude, the fondue place. But for the baked goods, I just can't resist those either. So it was about a 2-minute walk from our hotel. I was up in it every day. I've tried almost everything in that case. It's a little bit too close. We had great hotel breakfast and I ate crepes every morning.
Well, that's always my motto. If I'm not going to eat good, I'm not going. So this looks like it's taking care of everything. Yeah, I'm kind of getting sold. The farther we go, the more I'm buying into this.
I try to eat relatively decent whenever I'm out of town for work, but like I said, sometimes that gets really hard. We had some great options to eat pretty clean, and I came home and then got really sick because the drastic change in diet was interesting.
Huh, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, they don't really season very much over there. There's not any Tony Cashers or anything really sprinkling around, but they have something called fleur de sel that they put on the table, and that is salt specifically sourced from the sea, and it's awesome. And I would just sprinkle me some fleur de sel on whatever I ordered and call it a day, and I was good.
That brings up an interesting point about seasoning. Maybe you're having some type of reaction to seasonings that you eat when you're here.
Yeah, I don't want to think about that though.
I know, me either. So we're looking at a picture of what appears to be some type of building with moss growing all over it. What's that?
That was a house that was in town in Pornichet. One day we decided we were going to walk to the supermarket and get a few things, and we happened upon that house. That brings me to a funny story. The way that you mentioned in the West Coast, they don't really have plastic bags for you to use, or you have to buy them. France is the same way. So we get all the way over to the supermarket and they didn't have any plastic bags as an option. It was not an option. So we ended up buying reusable bags to carry our stuff home in. Thankfully, we hadn't bought very much, just kind of some fun souvenirs. I got a Sudoku for my best friend, Caitlin, and, a few different food souvenirs for y'all and Weston, and I was like, I'm glad we didn't buy very much because we were not prepared.
Yeah, I feel like there should be a sign for out-of-towners.
Yeah, that made me laugh when you mentioned that about California because they don't warn you, but it's good. I think it's a good thing for the environment and everything, but it is pretty funny that you're so culturally used to it in Oklahoma and the Midwest and whatever, and then you go to the West Coast or you go international and you're like, oh, need to be better about reusable bags, I guess.
Well, we've kind of gotten into this. So what I like about it is when you use those plastic bags, it's like you have a million of them.
Yes.
Reusable bags, you're getting out of the grocery store for 3 or 4 different bags. We finally bought into it. It's taken us a while, but we're bought in.
Yeah, I like it too. I think it's a good thing to, kind of face too.
So tell me about this town. What's it like architecturally?
It was pretty impressive. A lot of it was, just kind of really beautiful homes. And then because because it's like a tourist area, there were quite a few hotels and things of that nature. There was a casino in town. There was a bunch of places to eat. They really are big on the cafe style of eatery. So patios were a big deal, covered patios and things of that nature. And then, of course, you had the beach. So the beach was really beautiful. But yeah, I mean, just super impressive homes and buildings that have looked like they've been there for, a long time. It was really awesome to walk around. But it was a pretty compact and densely populated little city, and it had a lot to offer. It's really awesome.
So you and your coworkers decide you're going to go to Paris. How does that all come about?
Funny you ask. We asked the people who we were working with and who have been in this area before and done a lot of different points of interest around the area. And there was a castle we could have chose to visit. There was a submarine. Both of those were very close by. And then they said, you can get to Paris in like 3 hours. So we said, oh, maybe we should see if we can go to Paris. Well, we have to get there by train, which is also very interesting. One of my coworkers was highly interested in riding on a speed train if we could have made it work. And so I got online and was looking at the train line website, and we said, let's do it. It's not terribly expensive and it's not terribly far. So why wouldn't we? So we decided to pick the earliest departure out of Pornichet, which thankfully the town that we were in had the train station. So we took a train from Pornichet to Nantes, back to the place that we took the flight from. So now we know if worse comes to worse, we can take a train to the airport. Yes, so that train was just a passenger train that didn't go very fast. We had to change platforms, and we took the speed train, which they call the TGV Ennui train, to Paris. And that was an experience for sure.
I bet. So what did you learn about the speed train that you didn't know before this trip?
Well, speed train is pretty interesting. They have a first class and a second class option for seating. So you can choose to get an upgraded seat if you want, which that wasn't super surprising. But what was crazy is that thing goes 320 kilometers per hour, which that is 199 miles per hour.
Woo, that's fast.
Yes. So it doesn't go that the whole time, obviously, but it does average that speed, which is pretty interesting to be on it when it's going that fast. But it was a really cool way to travel.
Yeah, I bet. Was it comfortable?
Yeah, it was very comfortable. I mean, if you think of just kind of like a charter bus seat and you just hang out, they have bathrooms on the trains. This one specifically had like a buffet car, so you could go get snacks if you wanted to. It had Wi-Fi. You just hang out.
So what's it like going 199 miles an hour on a train when you're looking out the window? You just have to look far away at scenery. It seems kind of crazy.
Yeah, it moves pretty fast. It's kind of blurry, but it's kind of like you lock in on one spot and then it's gone. You lock in on one spot and it's gone really fast. But I tell you what, stopping feels insane in one of those things. They probably are gradually tapering off. Whatever they start stopping at to come to a complete stop is pretty aggressive, and it was interesting to feel it stop.
So what is the hop on, hop off tour part of that?
Oh, yeah. So that was something that we booked while we were in Paris, and someone suggested that we do a hop on, hop off tour, which is like the 2-tier bus. And it's just like bus tours around Paris. And they said this is the most convenient way to get from point A to point B because, Paris is quite the trek. And it's pretty daggone big once you get there and you really start considering distances and how far you have to walk to get to all these different monuments.
Okay, so Baylie has made it to Paris. And as you can tell, this is becoming a multi-part podcast. So we're going to wrap up right there with episode 14, but be sure to join us next week for part 2 of Baylie Goes to France so that you can hear all about her excursion in Paris, all the great things that she got to see. Also, don't forget to connect with us on social media. On Facebook, we are Highways and Hilltops. On Instagram, we are Jody Charlie Keith. We hope that you've had a great trip to France with us today. Have a great week. And until next time, we hope you get to go explore something fun this week.
See you next week.
Bye.